In today's World Insight, the China Central Asia Summit off to a roaring start as China's President Xi Jinping welcomes the leaders of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan in Xi'an. What are the big summit expectations as China steps up relations with Central Asian nations? Here's our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The ancient Chinese capital, Xi'an, rolls out the red carpet for the China Central Asia Summit. It is the first in-person gathering among heads of state of China and 5 Central Asian countries: Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. The summit is seen as a milestone for China Central Asia ties that will draw up a new blueprint for relations. What could be expected from the ongoing gathering, and how can they tackle challenges and tap into new opportunities? Before we ask our panelists, let's take a look at this backgrounder.
The first China Central Asia Summit is underway in the northwestern city of Xi'an, the historical starting point of the ancient Silk Road, on Thursday and Friday. The summit provides a new platform and opens a new chapter for cooperation among the 6 participating countries. The 6 heads of state will look into the state of China-Central Asia relations and exchange views on the construction of a China-Central Asia mechanism, as well as tackle major international and regional issues of common concern. Chinese President Xi Jinping has held bilateral meetings with the 5 Central Asian leaders separately as they arrived in Xi'an. Over the years, Central Asian countries have proven to be key partners of China as they share common interests in growing their economies, regional security, peace, and development. Trade between China and Central Asia in 2022 hit a historic high of more than $70 billion, up by over 100 times since diplomatic ties began about 3 decades ago. And since the Belt and Road Initiative was first put forward by President Xi Jinping 10 years ago in Kazakhstan, China and the 5 Central Asian countries have embarked on development strategies with positive results. The fruits of strong cooperation have been achieved under the BRI. Solid China-Central Asia relations are a window into how China peacefully pursued its vision and mission of regional connectivity. China has pushed for other global initiatives, not only the BRI, but also the Global Development Initiative and the Global Security Initiative. And there is also the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to collectively ensure regional stability and security. This time in Xi'an, leaders of the 6 countries are expected to sign an important political document and witness the signing of several cooperation agreements covering areas such as the economy, trade, investment, and connectivity.
Dance performances take center stage as China President Xi Jinping, along with his wife Peng Liyuan, welcomes leaders of Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan to Xi'an this evening. The ceremony took place in Tang Paradise, a complex built on the site of the original relic of an imperial garden dating back to the Tang Dynasty. About the ongoing China Central Asian Summit in Astana, we have Kasim Khan Kaparov, who is an economist, also the founder of the Economist.kz. In London, Professor Yelena Kazunova, I hope I pronounced your name right, the director of the Center for Euro-Asian Studies of the University of Reading in Beijing. Rong Ying, vice president of the China Institute of International Studies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Now, certainly this is unprecedented before the very first China Central Asian Leaders Summit. Go to you, Ms. Kazunova. Tell me more about your thoughts on the significance of this.
I think it's a remarkable event, and at the present time, we need to understand that the China-Central Asian ties have significant implication not only for themselves but for the regional stability, global power dynamics, and the range of economic, security, and social issues, and therefore, for China and Central Asia, it's a crucial moment to establish themselves firmly on the political and economic arena, and especially tackling the issues of economic priorities and security focus. And I hope that the summit will definitely provide the best opportunities and the new avenues to explore these possibilities.
I see. Mr. Kaparov, already some bilateral meetings taking place, some kinds of documents, formal documents already being signed. Among all those, what do you see as the most important areas of cooperation and statements?
Hello, thank you. In my viewpoint, it is crucial, it is very important that not only the content of the meeting, but also the format, because it's the first time since Central Asian nations gained independence that this summit is being held in person, and the region is represented as a whole and not on the bilateral level. And if we talk more about the contents, then I see it as a first global attempt to revive the legendary Silk Road. That's why this summit is being held in Xi'an, which is a route base for the Silk Road. And so basically we see that the first global initiative launched by the president of China after his re-election last year, it's directed towards the Central Asian region.
Mr. Rong, of course, from China's perspective, the Central Asian neighbors are extremely important at this point particularly. Tell me more, how much weight is there about China's relations with Central Asian nations right now in China's strategic map?
Indeed, as you rightly said, that Central Asia takes up a very important position for China's neighborhood diplomacy, and not only because the long boundaries as China shared with 3 of the 5 Central Asian states, but also I think the interests, the stakes, the peace, stability, and the prosperity that China have also been shared with the region as a whole. And as we have seen that the relationship bilaterally has always been very good, as we have seen that this the first day of the event. And the summit itself, I think, is aimed to broaden and extend the bilateral relationships with the 5 countries and to a regional context where I think China and the 5 Central Asian states really share the same sort of future, for the same vision for working together to build a community with shared future.
I really appreciate that, the 3 of you sharing your thoughts with us. Right now, we are also joined by our correspondent, Wang Guan from Xi'an. I guess we already have the analysts providing us with the bigger picture, but now more lively picture, I guess, from our correspondent. Tell me more about the ongoing China Central Asian Summit, especially the welcoming dinner. It seems to be quite an occasion to show the cordial ambience among all the leaders there.
Greetings, Tianwei, from a windy evening in Xi'an. Yes, indeed, there was a lot of pomp and pageantry, but in a good way. The Chinese leadership is certainly trying to pamper their guests from Central Asia with a lot of Chinese culinary delicacy, fine dining, if you will. There was an art performance, by the way, presented by artists from both China and Central Asian countries. I was really struck when I see a lot of string instruments. By the way, a lot of them actually were imported from none other than Central Asia to China hundreds and thousands of years ago. For example, this huqin, that we've just seen right now performing on the stage that was originated from the Central Asian region, performing and enjoyed by artists all around the area. That is really beautiful, striking a chord in the heart of many, a lot of ceremonies over there, but this is a crucially important relationship, however you look at it. There's, of course, a security component to it, there's a trade and investment component to it, and there's a cultural and people-to-people component to it. I can tell you, Tianwei, here, we just met a Kazakh student studying in Xi'an Petroleum University, and she told me that the Pinduoduo, a very popular Chinese e-commerce app, is actually very popular in Kazakhstan. People in Kazakhstan use Pinduoduo. They bought a lot of bed sheets, accessories, things, you name it. They bought it for either for their own consumption or for starting their own businesses, because they can mark the prices up. Things like this, a lot of concrete examples of practical cooperations between the two sides.
Certainly, we are not doing any advertisement for any specific platform, but certainly e-commerce is important for the region and beyond. Having said that, though, last question for you, Wang Guan. What is the expectation really for the big meeting coming on Friday? I understand the leaders are going to give their speeches and certainly illustrate their important points.
Exactly, Tianwei. We're expecting a joint declaration, a multilateral declaration from all sides. That is going to be very important. We're also expecting cooperation agreements in various fields covering energy, covering grain development, and covering educational exchange and cultural exchanges. And also, this is a very important relationship, and a lot of concrete cases are taking root. For example, if you talk about the CKU, the China-Kyrgyzstan Uzbekistan railway that has been delayed for multiple years, that is regaining momentum. If this railway can be picked up this time around, that would be the shortest route connecting China and Europe, connecting the East and the West, cutting travel distance by almost 1,000 kilometers, which is significant. We're expecting that as well, and a lot of concrete outcomes, deliverables, if you will, from this summit.
Looking forward. Thank you so much for your hard work. Our correspondent Wang Guan over there in Xi'an. Stay with us and we'll continue our discussion after a few reminders. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight. Let's bring back our three panelists coming from different parts of China and Central Asian countries. Earlier, the talk is pretty much about the beautiful ambience of the gala dinner held by Chinese President and the First Lady of China, and also to welcome the leaders of the five Central Asian countries. But the most important thing, of course, is the meetings to take place on Friday. Now, to you, Mr. Kaparov, what do you see are some of the most important deliverables from your perspective that would guarantee the success of this summit?
In my view, of course, the discussion that are being held at the bilateral level, but also as a region as a whole. So the deliverables will be linked not only to relations between China and one of the countries of the Central Asia, but rather for the projects that would involve several countries of the region. And we already see that there are a lot of announcements and meetings with large Chinese companies, and we're expecting more announcements to come. But in my view, one of the most important things is that this meeting on such high level is not only focused on infrastructure and trade like it was before, but it also includes other areas such as tourism, education, people-to-people connection. And I think that's what makes this summit special and important.
Mr. Rong, it seems that Mr. Kaparov was trying to suggest there has to be a comprehensive package of future interactions guaranteed by this summit.
Yeah, it's true. I think definitely we can expect there's something regional instead of bilateral, even though I think it would have to be based on bilateral. And I think this is also related to the mechanism itself, as we all agree that the summit itself is the attempt to build up the mechanism, build up a platform on which the cooperations, collaborations would be better coordinated, but more importantly, would be able, find the means to implement, to bring tangible benefits for the development of member states, but also, I think, the most important thing for the average people of the region as a whole.
Ms. Kaluznova, of course, China Central Asian Summit is extremely important. Meanwhile, Central Asian nations are participating in many different kinds of platforms and also mechanisms in the region and beyond. So how is this platform likely to contribute and complement the already existing ones, while at the same time be able to focus on the real strategic significance of future?
Thank you. I think this particular event will give boost and energy to transfer the ideas and the dimensions which are going to be discussed and already discussed during this time in other events and in other coalitions which Central Asia has. And I would say that the problems which the current world is facing, they are not unique for China and Central Asia, for example, but they have the global meaning. And as much as the background work will be done during this time, during this summit, the translation of these issues will definitely come to the other avenues. For example, we talk about infrastructure development, trade investment, energy cooperation, security and counter-terrorism, cultural and educational exchanges, environmental protection, climate change, and also healthcare and pandemic responses. That's all the global issues. And whatever tangible could come up from today and tomorrow conclusions, I think that there is a long way to translate this into practical implementation. And obviously the spillover of these points will make the effect on the neighbors of Central Asia, on the neighbors of China, and on the world as a whole.
Aspirations is mainly what we are talking about for the very first summit. Then we are going to come the ways to implement them and the roadmap to be there, and also the tangible the timelines to look at. So on those things, Mr. Rong, this is a very fluid region. If you look at some of the conflicts in the world over the past decades, it certainly had an impact on this region. But at the same time, this is also a region on the rise, while at the same time amid dramatic changes of the world, geopolitics, economic, and technology as well. So how do you see now this region's possibility, particularly possibilities of developing together with China with some important consensus?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it is true the region as a whole stands at a critical point where in the past 30 years and more since its independence, they have been trying very hard to explore a kind of a road that suits its conditions for development. And I would say they have made some progress, but they could have done more and better. And as you rightly said, that as we are looking around and ahead, I think the region, the leaders, and the people as a whole are asking the same questions. Where are we going?
Right.
And I think this is where the China and the China Central Asia cooperation can make a difference. As I said, that politically the 6 countries have a strong, deep bond and trust. And they also have a very strong, I think, sort of a foundation, where as we have seen all the 6 countries, I mean China with the 5 countries, they have established a kind of various kind of what we call the comprehensive strategic partnership. And They also have been part of the BRI initiative. And they also committed, all of them committed to building the community of shared future,
Right.
which I think formed the foundation for building a community of shared future as a whole. And and China has very much expressed its readiness and of course demonstrated its capabilities
Sure.
to work together for common development. I think this is what could make the difference.
Of course, Mr. Kaparov, the five Central Asian nations, they all have their very different history and also background, as well as the chemistry among them. Everybody has a different story, of course, bilaterally and multilaterally among the five. So how is that likely to work into this future mechanism, China and Central Asian nations together? That is certainly a very interesting question to watch, isn't it?
Indeed. Thank you for this question. I think there are more common things and more common ground between Central Asian countries, nations, rather than things that move them apart. But as a role model for this possible platform between China and Central Asia, I would suggest to look at the ASEAN-China Summit, which has been formed 25 years ago, and which eventually had led to creation of ASEAN-China Free Trade Area with trade turnover of almost $1 trillion as of last year. So in my view, of course, there are some challenges even within the region, but also opportunities, in my view, are much more brighter.
Mr. Rong, very briefly, we are seeing China Central Asian Summit taking place. While at the same time, there are a lot of things going on in the world. For example, Chinese special envoy going to Europe, visiting already Ukraine, and then to Poland and some of the other countries, and eventually Russia. We also see the upcoming G7 summit likely to taking place in Japan coming on Friday. So a lot of things are taking place. So how do you find the chemistry within this China Central Asian Summit likely to showcase to the rest of the world about a constructive way of making things happen?
Yeah, that's exactly, I think, the demonstration effect of China and Central Asia Summit, this event, is going to play out. As you rightly said, that in addition, apart from this event, there are other events going on. Yeah. And the G7, I think, summit is an example where I think the so-called seven most developed countries try to sort of impose or try to present their vision, how they look at the world and their perception of the world, how they manage the challenges, which I think has been strongly opposed by the Chinese side, because China definitely believe that it is not the right way by dividing the countries in the world into two camps. It's not a good way to play up or provoke differences instead of working for common grounds. And it is not the right way to aim a particular country, China, for all the and blaming all the problems on that. The China and the South and the Central Asia Summit has made very clear it is not targeted at any third country, and it's not meant to compete. As you rightly say, it's not meant to. It's meant to complement, to give full play the advantages, and to achieve win-win cooperation. So you're right. We are going to have very interesting shows going on at the same time in other parts of the world.
Right, Ms. Kaluznova, the world is getting more fragmented, unfortunately. But it seems that through the China Central Asian Summit, the leaders, at least of these countries, are trying to suggest, you know, when we are together, we will be able to have bigger possibilities. That's why everybody is together at this moment for this summit. So how do you think, you know, Asia, which is one of the fastest growing region of the world, according to IMF report, certainly, and China and neighbors providing most of the contribution, how do you see these nations, when they work together, could be able to also make their future brighter, as well as contributing to the rest of the world? ma'am?
I think it's very clear that if the division will be in the world, nothing good will happen. And if the cooperation is coming, but I would say sober cooperation or pragmatic cooperation, not friendship for the friendship, but friendship because it's beneficial for both parties. And here we've got two big powers. We've got Central Asia, we've got China, we've got Asia, and the development of Asia is certainly giving the boost within these countries, but also the spillover to other neighbors. And if this summit will identify the opportunities, which I'm sure they will, and they will sign the agreements, they also have to find the challenges and spell out these challenges as well, because as soon as we know the weaknesses or the dangers for cooperation, then the cooperation will be stronger. For example, we said about digital Silk Road opportunities. That might be one of the opportunities which will propel in future green energy transition. Only Lazy doesn't talk about the green energy now, but how to implement this, how to move from the words to the real implementation, it's a big question. Regional stability, which was already mentioned, it's also one of the things which will provide the sustainable development for all parties.
Well said. We are really running out of time. 1 minute to go. May I have maybe 15 seconds from everyone? One sentence, how can we make it happen? You know, this place, China and Central Asian countries, can showcase to the rest of the world and the region, certainly, a good example about amid all the changes, we move forward for the positive development. Go to Mr. Kaparov first.
Yes, thank you. I think that's the question in the core of today's meeting. And
we have 15 seconds for everyone, so we have to move fast, Mr. Kaparov.
Right. As I mentioned, for Central Asia, this meeting is quite important because it sets the precedent of how to work together with big countries, big nations such as China, Europe, US, and Russia. And I think that the experience that Central Asian leaders are gaining right now in Xi'an will be very helpful in future.
Ms. Kaluznova, 15 seconds if you can, please.
Okay, you could count. The key to me will be to pursue a balanced approach, the respect of national sovereignty, promotion of sustainable development, and also foster mutual benefits for all parties.
Well, that's within 15 seconds, ma'am. Thank you so much. And go to you last, Mr. Rong.
Yeah, I think the China and Central Asia has a vision, and I think what we are going to do is show that this vision is possible, and this vision is going to deliver more benefits and to the people in the region.
We are running out of time. Thank you so much for all of your contribution and also insights. Appreciate it. And that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to know more, search World Insider, check out our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter and Facebook. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for being with us. Bye for now.